Hello everyone. So today I'm going to do some watercolour techniques as we're going to be doing ducks this week, ducks on the water. So I thought I'd go through some watercolour tips and tricks and techniques and things that I know that will make it easier for you for your painting. So there's lots of different watercolour paints you can buy. I've got a couple here. These ones are Winsor & Newton, which probably most people know. I've got a few of these. I've got this one. I've got this one as well. You can see which ones are the newest ones and which ones are not. I'm taking all the colours out of some of these. This is another one, and this one comes with a separate little palette, which is quite good. You can like use that. Oh, let's lift that up. I've also got a little black set. This came from Hobbycraft. It's quite a good little painter's travel set, and they're good with I've got a water pen in here, so I've got a whole box of these. So they've all got different tips on them. So some are wide tipped, some have got wide tips, some have got narrow ones. So you've got a narrow tip, square, so they're all different. You can get all different shaped ones, and you just unscrew the end and just fill them up with water. And they're really handy because, and they screw backwards as well. That's really annoying, but they don't screw clockwise. Like everything screws clockwise except for these. These are the opposite, which is really annoying. But these are really handy. I use them quite a lot. Not all of them, obviously. But I've got one here in my paint set. So it's just easy to activate the paints. So yeah, that's really good. I've got another set here, which Creative Peak. These are really good. This is a bigger set. It's got obviously got more colours in it. That's really good. I really like this one because it's got bright colours in it. It depends on the make as to how intense the colours are. So the better, I would say, good quality make ones, you'll get really bright colours. And if they're not as good, they'll be less pigmented, so they won't be as bright. And this is a set that I haven't even used yet, but this is a magnetic set. It looks amazing. I don't think there's much paints in each little well, but I did a little colour swatch of them and they came out really nice. I think they'd be good for highlights. Yeah, so that's another thing. So I just thought I'd show them all so you can see what they're like. I think we're going to use this one today. This is Winsor & Newton, this one, and it's the basic colours, that one, what they come with when you buy them. I don't know if they do different ranges. I think they probably do. You can probably buy I think you can buy like a woodland range and a brights range, so they'll come with different colours in each one, depending on what, sorry, I'm trying to put this in the vlog, depending on what group they belong to. So yeah, so that's that. So I've got here, I'm going to be doing this is going to be going on the board for lesson. So I've got some cards here that I'm going to demonstrate techniques on, so you can see what I'm going to do. And I will put them on the Watercolour Techniques board in class, so you can see them, and you can also try them out and have a practice and do a little colour swatch on your colours. So like this, to see what colours you've got or what colours you're going to use. So we've got here 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So if you was to get a piece of paper, just do a swatch one out. Oh, sure, if you can see, got it up. Let's hope you can. Not really sure if the light's good or not. so let's just swatch this one out quickly. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Okay, so let's do 6 and 6. We could do 3 big ones really, couldn't we? I'm just doing it in pencil. That's it. Alright, so I like to do colour swatches for everything, if it's oil pastels or it's acrylics. I just think it's nice to look at. You can see what the colours look like on the paper you're using as well, which is quite good. But I do like to do a little colour swatch on the side of my paintings as well. Some people don't like it, but I do. Okay, so there we are. So I'm going to get a bigger brush. So it's good to work with different size brushes, because different size brushes hold different amounts of water. So I'm just going to show you some of the brushes that I have got. Okay, for different things. Not the palette knife. Okay, so these are like a filbert brush. It's a filbert brush, so it's like round. It's not square and it's not a round brush, but that's good for trees and bushes. This is a good for petals. This is like a petal brush because it's a petal shape. Flat edge, and that's a wide flat brush. That's really good for colour washes and for backgrounds. A fan brush, that's good for trees and doing all your textures. And this is a mop brush, so let me show you. This holds a lot of water, so it's still wet actually from when I last used it. These were quite expensive. These were, I think I bought 3 brushes. 3 brushes were, I think they was £35. Artway they're from, and they're really good. They do like leaves. If you're going to do leaves and flowers, I'll show you a painting that I did with these, just a quick demonstration. I'm not going to paint it, but I'm just going to show you the effects you get with so this is different shapes that you get with the different brushes. So this big brush did leaves this big, so you can just press down and lift up, and it's full of water. It holds so much water, but you can do one whole leaf and one whole rose that size with that brush. I'll show you actually. I'll show you on the back of this. You need quite a lot of water, so I'm going to wet my brush. Okay, so I'm going to put the paint into the paint there. I don't know if you can see this. That's probably better. Can you see better now? Oh, I hate doing pictures. It's not my favourite thing. Okay. Right, let's go back. So let me show you how you can see more. So that was a basic flower picture. and this one. So this is with a mop brush. It's very big and it holds lots and lots of water. So I just was just going to show you. So put your water in your well. Add your paints. Okay, so make sure you've got a lot of water in there. Okay, so I'm going to show you. So you can like press down and lift up. So these strokes are really fat, big fat strokes, because it's such a big brush. It's not really the right paper to be using this on, actually. I don't think it's a bit too textured. But that's quite amazing. It's good to have a little practice as well. Get some random paper and just practice your brush strokes. Because you can still get really fine with this big brush. It might be big, but you can get some really thin lines with it. And it's in your wrist. It's practicing in your wrist. Right, let's try a different colour. Let's try green. A bit of that green as well. It's a bit too bright, the other green. That's a bit better. That's a better green. Okay. So that's a really good brush. I really like that brush. I don't use it very often because it's my special brush. And they come with little covers as well, which is really good. So you can keep them nice and not get them bashed up with all your other ones. Right, okay, so I'm going to get a wide. Wide angle brush. Okay, so let's do a swatch now of what our paints are like. Let me just clean this out for a little minute. I don't normally clean out my my trays because I just use them again next time, but because we're doing all the colours, I think the yellow's going to get a bit dirty, so I'm going to clean it. Put a bit of water in. Okay, it's always good to see what they do and how different they look. So this is like the pure colour. So you can do this in your little colour library cards. You can do some colour swatches in there. Make some little squares and swatch out your paints that if you've got paints at home. You can do exactly the same with watercolour tubes. but you obviously need to put them into a palette and use them that way. That's a nice green. But they dry lighter, watercolours. Acrylics dry darker, but watercolours dry lighter because there's water in them. So just remember, when it dries it's going to be lighter than that. Oh, by the way, if you want to know, this is mid-jaw. I fancied a change. This is mid-jaw and an album called Orchestrated. So mid-jaw used to be an Ultravox in the 80s. And yeah, this is an album is with a live orchestra, which I love it. I'm always listening to it. I love it when I'm painting. So also it's good to swatch these out, because if you want to buy an individual colour, these pans just come straight out, so you can just click them in and out, and you can just add the ones you want. So if you want to make your own palette up, you can just buy your individual colours, which is a good idea. You could put all reds in one and all yellows in another, all the same family, so you could do reds, yellows and oranges in one, and then blues and greens and yellows in another one. So it's good to create the ones that you're going to use the most of. I think I've missed one out here. I've got one left. There we go. It was a blue, I think. It looks like it was this one. Missed the poor blue out. Right, let's have a look. I think that's the same one actually. Look, it's the same. So I've obviously used that blue, and it's the same. They're both the same blues. That looks like a phthalo blue, that one, because it's really bright. Yeah, so always do that, and then you can keep them. If you've got a mini one, you can just keep it and use it with when you're out and about. I also like to use a dinner plate. No one eats a dinner plate, a white dinner plate in my house, because a white plate means it's always had paint on it. So I've got a whole stack of plates that I actually bought some recently. I bought some on Marketplace. This good old Marketplace, it's got everything that you want. And there was someone that was selling a whole load of plates that they needed for a wedding, and the wedding never happened, and this lady was stuck with all these white plates, and she said, I just don't know what to do with them. So I think I got 30 of these and 30 side plates for £10. So that was really good. So if you need a plate, I can sell you one for £1 each. So you can have a plate. I'll bring a plate, dinner plate in, and you can use it just for painting. Watercolours, acrylics, it's you know, it's up to you, but they're good. They're really good for painting on. Okay, so let's put this to one side. So here we've got, I'm going to do the techniques here. So okay, so this is going to be a wet on wet. Okay, so that's going to be the first technique. So you want to wet your brush. I think I can zoom in for this bit. So you want to wet your brush, and you want to wet all the area that you're going to paint. Okay, so wet it first. Cover only the areas that you want to paint. So I'm going to paint all of this in, all the background in. Okay, so the paint will now only go to where the water is. So let's use a blue. Okay, this is good for skies. You can see it moving all the paint around. And it will dry different as well, so it doesn't always dry how you think it's gonna. It depends on what areas paint is on and how much paint is on there as to how dark it is. You might find areas are darker than others. You can drop paint in to different areas. Okay, so it's great for skies and for backgrounds, but you do need to allow it time to dry. Okay, so I'm going to put this up here. Can you see it? Yeah, wet on wet. Okay, so this one is wet on dry. So this is dry paper with just pigment. So this is just paint directly onto dry paper. So this makes the background quite dark because there's no water, and it's good for details because you can put details. Okay, so it will stay on the area where you put it because there's no water to move it around, so it's pretty good. It'll grab to the paper and it should just stay there, so you've got no, it won't bleed, which is good. And it's good for fine lines, and if your paper's damp then the colours are going to flood or they're going to bleed into each other, so just be mindful of what your paper's like before you paint on it. Okay, so already that's two, they look quite different. Okay, so this next one is light to dark, so we're going to just paint one stroke. Okay, and this brush is quite good for that because you can do one stroke in one. So like, so this is dark to light, so the darkest is at the top. Okay, so you can add a bit of water in your next one. Okay, a bit more water, so it will bleed into the colour above it. Okay, so that is dark to light. So before you paint on that, you do need to allow that to dry too. Okay, so now we're going to do blotting and lifting. Okay, so this technique is the removal of paint from your paper, and you can use a paper towel or a cotton bud or even a clean paintbrush. Okay, so we're going to wet the surface of the paper the same as what we did with the wet on wet. So I'm going to wet all of it. Okay, need to make sure your water's clean for this. Okay, okay, so I'm going to add the paint the same way as I did on wet. So if we imagine that this is going to be a sky, so this is going to be my sky. So I think it might be a bit light at the bottom, a bit dark at the top. Okay, so you can lift it out. So I'm going to lift it out just with a cloth here. So this is good for like if you want to do clouds or so you can use a cotton bud as well, which is quite good. And I'm going to show you also, oh, you can also use a dry brush. So let's dry brush some of this out. So this will lift the paint out. So it's like scooping the paint up, water up. So that is your blotting and lifting. I'm just going to move these over a bit. We'll let them dry. Okay, so the next one is resist. So you can do this, you've probably done this before, but you can do this. I'm just going to look and see if I've got my, I don't think I've got my candles. Let's have a look. No, I haven't got my candles today. Okay, I'll use a oil pastel. I'll do it in this colour so you can see it. So you can use, for this wax resist, oil and water don't mix, so it won't paint on the area where you put your wax. So you can use crayons, you can use oil pastels, you can use birthday candles, you can use tea light candles. There's lots of things you can use. So we'll use this so you can actually see what I'm going to do and where I'm going to paint it. So I'm going to, if you do white, obviously you wouldn't see the white, but the white would be in the background. Okay. So I'm just going to do a little flower like that. Okay, so now we're going to use our blue paint again. Okay. So as you paint, it will lightly it will show through the paint. I can see that. So if you're going to do this with your brushes, I would suggest you use an old brush, because the wax will get into the bristles of your brush in here. Okay, because it's a bit like, it stops when it gets to the wax, so the wax is going to stay in your bristles. So make sure you use an old brush. I've got brushes that I use called cloud brushes somewhere, flat round brushes, cloud brushes. Let me show you. So cloud brushes. Now these are all old, ratty tatty, rough, messed up brushes that have had all stuff stuck in them. Some are just rough that you wouldn't be able to paint with. Old brushes, even these ones, when you get in a painting set and they're no good for painting, just keep them and you can use them. So if they start to get rough, these are good ones for clouds, and they're a really old kind of brush, but they're quite good. So I just put these in a pot separately so I know not to mix them up with my good brushes. So I have all my brushes in separate pots. So I have round brushes, square brushes, flat brushes, cloud brushes, all different ones, and they're all separate so I don't get confused on what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to put these to one side, a little bit up here, out of the way. Blotting and lifting. Okay, so we're now on to graded wash. So let's get my, lost my brush now, what have I done with it? Let me just put it away. Right, so a graded wash, it can be done on wet or dry on dry, and it requires one or more colours for blending. So when you use another colour with it, and it touches the next colour, it creates a different colour grading. So I'm going to do it on here. We'll do blue. So probably about a third down, so we can add, got space to add another colour. Okay, now I'm going to add a green. So this will touch the blue. Okay, and as it touches the blue, it blends in with the blue. And I'm going to add a yellow, because these are all part of the same family, blue, green and yellow. So the yellow is going to go into the green now and blend into the green. Okay, so that's your graded wash. So if you was going to do a sky and you want to come down, you just want to do the background ready for putting the foreground details in, or the midground details. It's a bit closer up that you can see. So that's really good. Graded wash is really good. Next we have got sgraffito or a knife. So this is good for fur and things that you wouldn't be able to get a thin line, even with a very thin paintbrush. Let's have a look. This is quite a thin brush. These are like a rigger brush. A rigger brush is what you would use to do your trees and your branches and thin lines. But even that won't get won't do a line as good as what it will do if you use something sharp. So if you use a palette knife, for instance, or you can actually use a knife. So I'm going to show you the difference. I'm going to get my knife out and show you the difference between the two and how they look once they're painted over. Where's my knife gone? It's in my pencil case. That's my knife, my palette knife. Okay, so this is a palette knife, so I'm going to do some indents, and you can't really see it, so you might need to hold it up to the light when you're scratching and you want to see what you're doing. You can get the light at the right angle. Okay, so this palette knife's good for straight lines. You can't go around corners of it because it won't turn, but with the knife it will. But you don't want to be digging the knife into the paper. You want to do it at an angle. So I'm doing it kind of horizontal. So you can get wavy lines and curly lines. You can do this on dry paper. You can also do it on wet paper, but wet paper is quite fragile. It becomes more fragile the more water that you put on it. So you'll find that you could scrape it. I'll show you once I've put some water on, but you could scrape it out and it might take the paper off. So you have to be a bit careful how you do it. Okay, so let's put a wash over this. So you can see the lines. It's good to do it with a dark colour because it shows up and the paint goes into the grooves and it fills up with paint and makes it darker. Okay, look. So that's really good for whiskers and feathers and grasses and things like that. Right, so next we're going to do dry brushing. Okay, so dry brush is what it says, it's a dry brush, so it's not wet at all. So I'm going to find an old brush and do this so I can separate the hairs. So if you look at this, it's got separate hairs, so that will give different techniques. So now we can completely dry this brush. Look, and if you look inside, it's kind of got a few layers to it. Okay. So this is good for like trees and grasses and where you can't always get straight lines. So because this is an old brush and you can see it's separated in the middle here. So I've got kind of, you see that? I've got like 2 layers to that. So if I did a normal, I'm just going to show you. that's how far apart. There's a gap in the middle where it's so old. But it's good. It gives good results. And it would be good for like buildings and shading, and yeah. So you can obviously do, let me show you. So you could change the angle as well. Go from the top. Now just to show you. So that's really good technique. But they've all got their place somewhere, you know. All these techniques are good for different things. You might not use them all together, but you might use a few at a time in your paintings. You might not use any of them, you know. You might just want to just paint without using techniques. But it's nice to know what is there and what you can use. So the next one is salt. So I've got sea salt grinder, okay, and it's quite big chunks of salt in here. The bigger the chunks the better, really, because for some reason it just works better with bigger chunks of salt. The chunkier the better, and the better effect you seem to get. So we're gonna paint the background. Okay, so I'm not going to put any water on the background, I'm just going to put paint on the background. So we can go back to this one afterwards. It's going to take a little while to dry. So I just want to put a really dark colour down so you can see the effect that you get. Okay, a bit more. It's going to take a little while to dry. So I thought if I do this salt one, I can explain it to you, and while we leave it to dry, we can come back to it later. Okay, so this is my salt grinder. There's a big chunk still in there, but it's ground some of them down, but I can't take them out of this grinder. So if I could take the lid off, I would just take them out and use the chunks, which would be a lot better. But because it's ground it, it's going to be a bit smaller, but we'll see. So you don't always get, you might get little chunks because they're little pieces. I wish I could take these out of here. I don't think I can open it. I'm going to try. It looks like I can, but no, I don't think I can. I don't think it's gonna. It's a shame. If I could. No, I can't get the lid off. So this lid doesn't, it's got a thread on it. I can see it's got a thread, but I don't think the lid's going to come off. Oh, that's a shame. We could have used with them. Okay, so probably Himalayan rock salt, and maybe buy one just for painting. But the big chunks are definitely better. So we'll leave that to dry, and once that dries, we'll be able to take that off. Okay, and I've got one that I want to show you. I'm going to paint the background, and it's going to be watercolour pencils. So these are really good for different, like if instead of doing splatter effects, which I was going to show you splatter, but you already probably know what splattering is, you know, like making sure you have to tape off all your paper and splat your paint on your brush to get splatter techniques. But the only problem is with that is it's quite messy. So I think that the watercolour pencils is a better way of doing it, because it's a bit more controlled and it's a bit more easier to use. So I'm going to show you. I've got watercolour pencils, but I've also got these, which are Inktense Derwent Inktense pencils. So these are really good as well, and because they're watercolour, and normally you can tell watercolour because they've got that little brush picture. So if you see that little brush picture on there, that means that they're watercolour. Because sometimes you can buy pencils or get pencils, second-hand pencils, or go to a boot sale and buy some pencils, And you can pick out all the ones that are watercolours, even if they're in a bundle, because they've got that little paintbrush on them. So even if they've got no writing, as long as you can see that paintbrush, you'll know you can use them for watercolour. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to cover with yellow. Okay, so I'm just going to colour this in yellow while it's wet. Okay, cover all the background. Okay, so you can use a knife. I'm going to use a knife, but you can use, I've seen people that have used like graters, you know, like you grate like little baby graters, the little hand ones, like for chocolate and things like that. You can use that. I'm going to use my craft knife. So while the paper's wet, this gives really good effects in wet paint, because like for insides of flowers and petals, you know, the little dots, you just can't do a dot small enough sometimes, and you don't get what you want. I'll take some greens and some blues so you can see. They look like little fireworks. So it's a bit more easier to control than it is with the splatter proof, because the splatter just goes wherever and you don't know where it's going to land or where it's going to go. So let me just show you this while it's wet. So you can see how wet it is, but the colours should spread out. So once it spreads out, you'll see. And I'm also going to do I want to do another one. I'm going to put these pencils, let's put these pencils away first. I've just remembered that I haven't done a little square for this one, so we're going to do it as I'm going along. So that says glazing. I haven't done the glazing one yet. We'll do it on this side. I'm just going to do bloom or cauliflowers. Some people call them cauliflowers, I call them blooms really, but okay, so we have another one. Okay, so this one is where we're going to wet the paper again. I'm going to use the same yellow that we used for that one. You can get a hairdryer to dry some of these as well, if you're in a rush and you need to wait for the next layer to dry. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that for a second. I'm going to get a different brush. I'm going to get a round brush. So now I need it to be a bit dry. Let's just see, not too dry, but oh, that's okay. Okay, that's more of a damp. Right, so now you can get another colour. So as you can see, the water's spreading out, so it's got to be semi-damp and semi-dry. They do take time to develop sometimes, so you might have to be a bit patient. But as you can see, from one dot, it's spread out. It's drying now, so it's probably not going to spread out that much, but you can see how much the red has spread out. So it's like a fur technique as well. If you look at this one here, It looks a bit like fur. So you could use that for fur. That would be quite good for fur. It's because it spreads out more. I think the longer you leave it, you could probably add more to it if it was more wetter. Let's try and wet it a bit more. Let's try this corner down here. Put a bit more paint in here. Right, I'm gonna just do this corner and do a big one. It's a bit too wet at the minute. Let's blow it. Right, let's try. If it's too wet, it won't work because it'll just be a puddle. Right, let's try. So let's see if we can watch this spread out a bit. Let's move it around a bit. Let's see what it does. So you can see that with a bigger one, a bigger blob, when it dries it gives really good effect. So these are dry nearly now. So that's it really for painting techniques. There are others, but I think that's enough for today. Let's move this up. Sorry about my camera. My camera's not great, unfortunately. I'm not very good with doing videos. You kind of get what you get, really. I try to be organised and get everything ready beforehand, and there's always something that I didn't bring, and there's always something that I need and I haven't got. So, right, okay, so that's it for your watercolour techniques. So when you get your watercolours, if you've got them at home, do a colour chart and practice these. So have some fun with it. It'll look good. This is drying well nicely. Yeah, it's all good. Right, I will see you soon. Sorry for the long video. Bye bye.